Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Cannabis Common Sense. We got off to a little bit of a late start because of technical difficulties. It appears the cable got cut somewhere before we get online or on the air. But we're here now, and we're ready to go forward a little bit shorter, abbreviated show. We have an interesting hip news segment for you tonight with legislation in New Mexico and Michigan to report on. We have the Dardano, Pate, and McFadden band here to inspire us with some music and a few images from the THCF Medical Gardens. Don Dupay and I will be taking your phone calls in just a few moments. So stand by, and we'll start out as we always do with our infamous Dancing Cannabis Leaves. All right, our first story tonight is from the Salt Lake Tribune in Salt Lake, Utah. According to Pamela Manson, the writer for the Salt Lake Tribune, the odor of burning marijuana is insufficient to allow police to enter a residence without a warrant. The Utah Supreme Court ruled Friday. In a 4-1 decision, the court said only a limited number of circumstances create an exception to the warrant requirement, such as preventing the imminent destruction of evidence. Smelling cannabis is not one of them, the ruling says. The ruling went, quote, the aroma of marijuana must be accompanied by some evidence that the suspects are disposing of the evidence as opposed to casually consuming it, end quote. Justice Ronald Nearing wrote for the majority. The decision stems from the case of Bernadette Duran, who was charged in the 7th District Court in Utah with 3 drug counts and 1 count of possession of a dangerous weapon. Trial judge denied Duran's motion to throw out the evidence, but the Utah Court of Appeals reversed, saying the police officers were not justified in entering the residence. The case then went to the Utah Supreme Court, which upheld the Court of Appeals decision. According to the court documents, police were called to a trailer in April of 2003 by the brother and mother of the tenant. The two reported that people inside the trailer, which was located on the mother's property, were smoking marijuana while the tenant was away. They also said the tenant kept a gun there. The officers later testified they could smell the faint but unmistakable odor of, quote, marijuana leaking out of the cracks of the trailer, end quote, and decided the occupants were smoking up the evidence. They entered and allegedly found controlled substances, several firearms, and 3 people, including Duran. This is from an article in the Salt Lake Tribune called Marijuana Odor Insufficient for Warrantless Search. It was published today, March 9th, 2007. Our next story is from the Albuquerque Tribune. In a hoarse voice, Erin Armstrong has talked at committee hearings about suffering through thyroid cancer. She'd spoken to lawmakers one-on-one and to reporters. Her message, marijuana can help ease the suffering of the sickest among us. But Armstrong, who's 25, could say next to nothing Thursday after the Utah House, on a 33-36 vote, killed a measure that would allow chronically ill patients to use marijuana for medical purposes in the state of New Mexico. She said she is, quote, terribly disappointed and devastated, end quote. She's surrounded by her mother and a crowd of equally teary-eyed friends and lawmakers. As soon as the vote was completed, a downtrodden Armstrong left the House floor to be folded into the silent embrace of her friends. The bill actually, according to Las Cruces Sun News, in an article written by Diana Alba for the Santa Fe Bureau, all eyes in the House were fixed on Martin. Wrapped up for the second time the use. The yeas at first outnumbered the nays. During the 30-second span, lawmakers had to cast a vote Thursday, but were soon edged out, leaving the final tally at 33-36. the bill had failed. Just moments earlier, a vote on the same bill had resulted in a tie, with 3 members absent from the House chambers. Through a procedural move, Majority Floor Leader Ken Martinez brought the measure back for a second consideration. Round 2 saw 3 members flip-flop. 2 switched their vote to yes, and another 2 switched their vote to no, after previously voting yes. The 3 lawmakers absent in the first round made an appearance for the second. 2 cast votes against the bill, while 1 was in favor. The unusual episode was the fitting wrap-up to a debate that featured the unusual circumstances of lawmakers throwing party lines to the wind. Some Democrats spoke against medical marijuana use because it could send a negative message to children, while some Republicans argued in favor of the bill because it could alleviate pain for sufferers of serious illnesses. And so that was according to the Las Cruces News, and that was again published today, March 9, 2007. In Michigan, from Detroit, Michigan, patients who use cannabis medicinally under a doctor's supervision should not be subject to criminal penalties, according to a resolution unanimously approved by the delegates of the Michigan Democratic Party at that organization's 2007 state convention in Detroit. Approximately 1,500 delegates backed the resolution. The unanimous endorsement comes just days after voters in Flint, Michigan, passed a municipal measure shielding medicinal cannabis patients from local prosecution. Flint is the 5th Michigan city since 2004 to pass medical marijuana legislation. Legislation to enact statewide protections on the possession and use of medicinal cannabis is pending before the Michigan House Judiciary Committee. And the Marijuana Policy Project says they're going to fund an initiative in Michigan if that bill doesn't get through the initiative house. Our next story is from New York City. African Americans and Hispanics in New York City are far more likely to be arrested and receive a conviction for minor marijuana offenses than are white citizens, according to statistical data to be published in the Journal of Criminology and Public Policy. Investigators at New York City's National Development Research Institute, or NDRI, an independent think tank specializing in substance abuse issues, analyzed local marijuana arrest data from 1980 to 2006. The authors reported that 85% of the defendants arrested in New York City for the crime of possessing marijuana in the 5th degree, or smoking cannabis in public, were either African American or Hispanic. African Americans and Hispanics together comprise approximately half of the city's population. Investigators also reported that African Americans were 2.66 times as likely as whites or European Americans to be detained before arraignment, while Hispanics were nearly twice as likely. In addition, both groups were twice as likely as whites to be convicted on cannabis charges. Compared to Caucasians, African Americans were 4 times as likely, and Hispanics were 3 times as likely to receive additional jail time. The authors of this report wrote, "In light of the disparities, we recommend that the NYPD consider scaling back on the enforcement of smoking marijuana in public view, and that legislators consider making smoking marijuana in public a violation and not a misdemeanor," end quote. That's from New York City, and it came out yesterday on the 8th of May. The full text of the study, the race ethnicity disparity in misdemeanor marijuana arrests in New York City, will appear in the spring 2007 issue of the Journal of Criminology and Public Policy. Our final study tonight is from Hawaii, the islands, from West Oahu. Taxing and regulating cannabis in Hawaii in a manner similar to alcohol could yield the state approximately $33 million in annual revenues and cost savings, according to an economic analysis released last week by the University of Hawaii. The study found that regulating cannabis could create annual tax revenues of up to $23 million. The study added that prosecuting and enforcing state cannabis laws cost taxpayers in Hawaii approximately $10 million per year. Of this total, more than 40% is spent by state and county law enforcement solely to enforce marijuana possession laws. The study states, quote, "Those who favor legalization argue that policies like those involved in the regulation of alcohol and tobacco are far more effective in limiting the individual and social costs involved. Taxation is significantly cheaper in terms of enforcement and outcomes than outlawing substances," end quote. The study also reports that law enforcement efforts to restrict Hawaii's cannabis supply have been ineffective because the black market price of marijuana per ounce has fallen over the last decade, indicating a marked increase in supply and consumption. Previous nationwide analysis of marijuana policy by Boston University economist Jeffrey Myron reported that enforcing state and federal cannabis laws cost taxpayers an estimated $7.7 billion annually. The full text of this study, the budgetary implications of marijuana decriminalization and legalization for Hawaii, is available online at the Drug Policy Forum of Hawaii's website. That's www.dpfhi.org. That's dpfhi.org. That is the end of our Hemp News segment tonight, and now we will hear from our esteemed band. We have Mr. Dardano, Mr. Pate, and Mr. McFadden. How are you folks this evening?
Very well.
You were sure sounding hot before the show, so I'm sure you will now.
We'll see if we won't cool off or we'll just warm up a little bit more.
All right.
Somebody else join us here in a minute, too. Let's just play some music.
From the D. 1,
Do it.
2, and 3, and Wolfie on harmonica.
Thank you, Wolfie.
Monica, Mr. Michael Siegel. Yeah. Well, I want to welcome you. How are you doing this week, Don?
Great, Paul.
Good, good. It is the night of the 9th of March, 2007, and if you have a question for us, you can call us at that phone number right there on your screen. It's 503-288-4448. That's 503-288-4448. We'll be taking your calls, for about another 30 minutes or so here before we have to cut out. We got a little late start because of some technical difficulties in our studio, but we're ready to go now. Heck, we have a call right away. Hello, caller. You're on the show.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Don Dupay. I appreciate all your work you're doing, and I met you in the Hemp Festival in downtown Waterfront Park, remember?
Yes.
And Mr. Paul Stinford, all the thanks for him for all the effort and everything.
Thanks.
Just a
Did you have a
little
question
thing
for
last
us
time I
tonight?
called and I requested left some message. I think you're very busy. You don't have time to maybe get the message. If you can please get my number and contact me and help me out
We'll do the best
in my
we can.
situation.
We get calls every week. This week I spent several days up in Spokane, and in fact, we had a pretty good story in the Spokane Spokesman Review yesterday that covered our clinic up there and talked
good.
about patients and all that. So it was a pretty productive time, but it's a long drive to Spokane.
It is.
It's like 7 hours each way, so I had a good 14 hours of driving to get there and back. But we did it, and we helped almost 50 patients.
That's the
It's a good
important
thing.
part.
That is indeed.
That's the important part.
Yep. So there you have it. Try to help as many people as we can. Of course, the sooner the state enacts a dispensary law, the better off patients will be. Right now, patients have a hard time growing it themselves, especially disabled, poor patients can't afford the expensive equipment, utility bills that come with cultivating their own cannabis garden. So we're hoping the state's going to step forward. I know we have Bill, 767? I'm sure that's the number. Senate Bill 767 that was introduced by Senator from Eugene.
Prozansky?
No, not Prozansky.
Morissette.
The other one.
Morissette.
Morissette.
Morissette, yeah.
That's it. Senator Morissette. Prozansky introduced a hemp bill in the Oregon legislature. And once again, for our viewers out there, outside of Oregon, we're talking about the Oregon legislature. There's some other interesting bills out there in the various states, but in Oregon, I think Bill 767 is one of the best ones. There's some other bad ones as well.
We do need a dispensary. Meeting patients in the parking lot is still not good.
No. One
not
thing
good.
that this fellow up in Spokane said is the last line in that newspaper article that they did yesterday in the Spokane Spokesman Review is, I can quote this from Darren McCrae of Cannabis, "It's morally unacceptable to send our sick and dying patients into the street to scrounge for their medicine."
Amen.
So we hope our legislatures will hear that and enact Senate Bill 767. If they don't, I think we'll probably see some initiatives addressing that again. You know, we had a dispensary measure that was voted down by the public here, what was it, 2004?
Yes.
I think it was 2004. No, maybe it was 2002. But we'll see how that goes. If you're out there this evening and you have a question for us tonight, give us a call at 503-288-4448. That's 503-288-4448. Got a couple interesting new show and tell bottles here. Maybe I can get camera 2 to close in on this one. This one's quite unusual. It's from 1880. It's a compound of ovarian and cannabis compound. It says it includes hemoglobin, an ovary extract, and cannabis indica from G.D. Searle and Company. And so that's a pretty interesting bottle there.
But this one here.
This one is, it's kind of scary. What can help you with ovary? Well, in the 1880s, maybe they thought it would help. Who doesn't say what they prescribed it for. This one is a little bit more interesting. You chock 500 in this little bottle. They must have been tiny
They must
pills.
have been a little one,
500 compressed neuralgic chocolate-coated tablets that included cannabis indica extract and opium extract. So it was an opium and cannabis compound from Belgian Company in Rochester, New York. That would probably knock you out if you had it. And chocolate-coated.
Chocolate cookies.
I don't know.
They are still in business, not
Choc-
as called M&Ms.
They took the opium and the cannabis out of those, though. But chocolate-coated pills, who were they shooting at with those? I mean, I don't know. But there they are. That's show and tell for this week. Or sharing. That's
It's
what we call
amazing
it.
the preparations they had and used.
It really is. It really is. You have,
Chocolate-coated opium pills. That's just...
and cannabis. Opium and
Cannabis,
cannabis.
yes.
And chocolate.
And chocolate.
And chocolate.
All those drugs together. There's other things in it, too. You know, I can't read it all, though. Got to get my bifocals working there. Anyway, if you have a question for us tonight, it's not too late to call us at 503-288-4448. We're hoping we'll get a couple good calls here this evening. We have a little video we're going to roll from Spokane. This was actually done last month, much like the newspaper article that ran yesterday. Watch this and enjoy.
Today, about 40 Spokane people who have serious illnesses were told by a doctor they could legally smoke marijuana for medical reasons. KXLY4's Jeff Humphrey live at the Spokane County Courthouse. Why do certain diseases make patients immune from the state's drug laws?
Well, Richard, that's because back in 1998, Washington voters gave people who suffer from various cancers and neurological problems the right to possess and use small amounts of marijuana. However, even 9 years later, these people are still struggling to see if they do, in fact, get the marijuana treatments they need, they don't wind up being treated as criminals here in court.
I have 24/7 chronic pain, major in my knees and back. I can't walk, I can't stand.
Pam Murch is a former advertising executive stricken with multiple sclerosis and scoliosis. After trying painkillers and muscle relaxers, she found marijuana treats her symptoms the best.
It relaxes my spasms. I have a lot of, Charlie horses, major, that come in my legs on a daily basis, and that helps relax that a lot.
Today, Murch was one of about 40 people who visited this traveling clinic that set up shop at a Spokane hotel. These patients must have their medical records and conditions reviewed by a doctor if they want to qualify for their permit. But many family physicians are still reluctant to sign off on the cannabis treatments.
Probably 3/4 of the doctors don't know that it's been legalized in Washington State for medical purposes in 1998.
However, Dr. Thomas Orvald is willing to meet with prospective medical marijuana patients. The heart surgeon says after 40 years in the business, he thinks pot's natural properties outperform man-made pills.
By helping them achieve some relief from pain by using a non-toxic medication, I think it's appropriate.
However, Dr. Orvald will not tell his patients where to get marijuana. Most try to grow it themselves, and if they're caught with more than a 2-month supply, their permit won't protect them from prosecution. Now, both the Food and Drug Administration as well as the Drug Enforcement Administration do not recognize the benefits of medical marijuana use, and that means that if one of these patients was charged in federal court, Washington state law would not protect them. Reporting live at the courthouse, Jeff Humphrey, KXLY4.
All right. There was a little excerpt from a month ago up in Spokane. We do have a phone call, though. Hello, caller. You're on the show.
I was just calling to give you a compliment. I am a caregiver for a medical marijuana patient who actually has multiple sclerosis, and we were in your Portland clinic today, and I just want to let you know how very much we appreciate what you're doing and how very friendly all of your staff are.
Thank you.
It was a lengthy experience, but it was an extremely friendly and enlightening and educational experience. So
Good.
I just
So
want to thank you for what you're doing. We genuinely appreciate it.
You're most welcome. So you got to meet both Dr. Orvald and our new doctor, Marath, there.
We did. Yes, we did. And, Dr. Orvald, I have to say, he is such a fine man. He gave the medical marijuana patient some true hope. I mean, he said some things that the other doctors have never said to him, and it was a good experience. It really was, and we really appreciate what you're doing, and we feel so fortunate that we have this here in the state of Oregon, and
Thanks.
I'm very thankful for that and for what you folks are doing, and I just want to thank you.
You should know, and be sure your patient knows as well, that CBD in cannabis, or cannabidiol, has been shown to slow the progression of multiple sclerosis and other neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's, ALS, and Alzheimer's. So the best way to take CBD is to take it orally 3 times a day, once in the morning, middle of the day, before you go to bed at night. And even the leaf has CBD, so you can get a CBD dose for, it's not only good for neurodegenerative diseases, but also for pain, spasms, and seizures. And so you can get CBD from the leaf. You have to cook it at a low temperature or simmer it with oil or butter to take the carbon dioxide molecule off. It's called decarboxylation. Once that's taken place, then it's medicinally active. And
wow,
so
that's
something
I did not know that.
Most MS patients need to know, because they can slow the progression of that disease. I'm sure that a cure is just around the corner somewhere in the next few years. In that regard.
Sure hope so. It's a terrible, terrible thing. But what you folks are doing is really a wonderful thing, and I want to thank you for that. Thank you very much, and please keep doing what you're doing.
We will. Wild horses couldn't drag us away, and a few of them have tried. So thanks. Thanks for that encouraging call. Do you have an editorial for us tonight, Don?
I do, Paul. I just about decided that the reason we have a drug problem is because of the 6 o'clock news. Because you can't watch primetime TV without seeing all the drugs that are there for the ads. Got over-the-counter stuff like NyQuil, Tylenol, Tylenol PM, aspirin, Bayer, children's aspirin, Bayer for your heart, Tums for your tummy. And then there's the prescription drugs. Get a good night's rest with Ambien or Lunestra. There's Procrit if your chemotherapy leaves you exhausted. Paxil if your chemotherapy leaves you depressed. Flonase is going to unplug your nose. Paxil, and then there's that little purple pill called Nexium, and the diamond-shaped pill called Viagra that's made famous by rich old men and race car drivers. You realize Viagra sponsors a race car? They must say, go fast or something, I don't know. Never mind the fact that Viagra can cause blindness. There's always a caveat available too. It says, by prescription only, and ask your doctor if it might be right for you. And then they mention the side effects, and the announcer starts talking really fast, may cause abdominal cramps, nausea, vomiting, dizziness, shortness of breath, visual side effects. And then there's the scariest one, the one that says, may cause sudden and uncontrolled bleeding. I think they should be required to run the side effects first so we can see, do I want to get dizzy and throw up? Do I want some diarrhea? How about cramps and bleeding? Do I want some of that? But there have always been drug problems, you might say. Well, yeah, there's always been alcohol. And it must have been an ancient problem because the Bible says, don't be a drunkard. But Bible admonitions didn't stop people from drinking. Prohibition didn't work either. Back in the day when opium was available, over-the-counter, various preparations, laudanum was probably one of the most famous. Take 2 teaspoons in the morning and your day will go better with your opium. And if you're not out, well, that's okay. Grab a bottle of Coca-Cola. It was cheap, 5 cents a bottle, and contained cocaine. Now that was a bargain. It was different times, of course, and mostly nobody cared what you swallowed or smoked. Nicotine, of course, will never go away. It's an addictive poison. Still killing millions legally. That's what ought to be on a package of cigarettes. And then came this big conspiracy in the 1930s that led to reefer madness. And the pharmaceutical companies come up with these chemical preparations which they could patent and control. And they've been wildly successful, too. Here we are some 70 years later, and all of us Americans are addicted to something. Valium, Klonopin, Xanax, Seroquel, Paxil, Vicodin, oxycodone, hydrocodone, trazodone, Zoloft, methadone, Lexapro. Is any of your drugs in there somewhere? If they are, you already know what the side effects are. And you know what the problems are. 250,000 Americans are hospitalized every year with adverse drug reactions from the pharmaceutical companies. Now, the pharmaceutical companies make people sick, and then they go to the hospital, and it creates more business for the hospital, who gives you more drugs. It seems like the pharma barons have created a veritable briar patch of addictive and lethal chemical concoctions served up by a white-coated pharmacist with their outstretched hand. I think the DEA ought to turn their guns on the real drug criminals, the robbing, addicting, and sickening pharmaceutical companies. That's the way I see it tonight, right down here on Hemp Street.
Thank you, Don. We do have another caller. Hello, caller. You're on the show.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm on my cell phone.
Okay.
Anyway, I got a question for you guys. I've watched your show quite a bit, and you guys always do a great job. I appreciate it. And I'm a patient and with my own grow site, And I have a friend who's a patient with his own grow site, and he has a backyard he can grow in, and I don't. You know, like when the summer comes around, what do I have to do? Completely shut down to let this guy grow some for me in his backyard, you know, during the flower
All
season?
your plants have to be at one location. So if you're going to have him grow some in the backyard, and you know the lights are a lot cheaper out there, the big grow bulb in the sky does a much better job than the artificial ones.
Yeah.
And then they're natural pests that'll eat the nasty pests that manage to make their way to indoors that kind of keep the bad ones. The good pests keep the bad pests in check. And ventilation, you don't have to do your own ventilation. The wind itself will do the ventilation you need there. So I recommend that you do go with that outdoor situation, but just remember this, it can't be visible from public. If you are growing cannabis outdoors, it has to be private. It can't be visible to the public. So you'd want to have a fence that was taller than the plants or something along those lines. Then,
now,
or something
do I
far
need to
enough away from
notify
other
the,
people that
OMAP?
there's forest in the way.
Do I need to notify OMAP and tell them that
if you're going to not, you can only grow at one address in Oregon, and that's true in other states as well, like Hawaii and Colorado. You have to notify the state anytime your garden moves. Now, in California and Washington, there aren't state permits. It's simply the doctor's authorization. So there's no one to notify in those states. In fact, you don't have to pay a fee to the state in those states. There's that advantage. But in Oregon, you have to notify the OMAP office, and I would recommend notifying them in advance. Say, I'm going to move my plants and shut down this garden and grow over there, and then notify them in writing on the day it happens. By law, you have to do it within 30 days in Oregon, and so keep that in mind. But the sooner you do it, the sooner your new garden will be protected.
Yeah, because May and June's coming up here soon, and you know that's the time you want to get them outside. But
I would recommend around late April or early May, once the light gets up and over 13 hours of daylight a day.
So I do need to completely shut my indoor grow operation here at my own home to have my friend do it over his place in his backyard.
Well, each patient is limited to 6 plants that are taller or wider than 1 foot under Oregon state law. So if there are going to be more than 6 plants that are taller or wider than that at your friends where you're going to be growing those, then you will have to shut down. If you're going to be growing at another location, you'll have to shut down one location and move things to the other location during that time.
Do they get mad at you if you then, as soon as the summer season is over, do they get mad if you switch back to your home?
No, the OMP office in the health department is happy to cooperate with you. They just need to know. And then once they know, if the police inquire, then they can inform the police that, yes, that is a licensed grow place for 1, 2, or 3 patients.
Well, thank you so much. That's great. And like I say, you guys do a great job and keep up the good work. And hopefully you guys can get this thing spread to the whole country.
We're working on it, one state at a time.
Wow.
Thanks for your call. Yeah, if you have another question for us, we got about 10 minutes or so to go where we can take questions. Call us at 503-288-4448. Now, there are a number of conditions that qualify for medical marijuana, and we're going to pop those up on the screen. The largest one is chronic pain. About 60 to 70% of all the patients who get a medical marijuana permit qualify under chronic pain, and that can be any one of hundreds of different conditions. Degenerative discs in the back, perhaps the most common. Chronic nausea also qualifies. That includes several gastrointestinal ailments like IBS, Crohn's disease, GERD. Chronic nausea is also caused by hepatitis C, which also causes chronic pain. Cancer, AIDS, glaucoma qualify, as do seizure disorders like epilepsy and spastic conditions like multiple sclerosis. Other neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease also qualify. So if you or a loved one have one of those conditions, then you can qualify for a medical marijuana permit. It's always best to try to obtain that through your own physician. But if your physician doesn't want to do that, and I've heard of some physicians firing their patients or stop serving a patient because they asked them that question. Some of them don't, though. So you could ask your physician. They can only say yes or no. But if you don't want to ask your physician because you don't want that in your permanent medical record, or you want to keep that a more private basis, then we have physicians who are ready to help you all across the West, in Oregon, Washington, California, Hawaii, and Colorado. In Portland, you can call us at our main office. It's 503-235-4606. That's 503-235-4606 in Portland. If you're up in Seattle, the Seattle number is 206-878-1701. That's 206-878-1701. We're on every Thursday night at 11 p.m. on Seattle's cable channel 77 for the next third of a year anyway. And then in Denver, we are on every Tuesday and Thursday night at 11 p.m. on cable channel 58. We have an office there, and you can call that number at 303-403-9996. That's 303-403-9996. Now, if you're outside of those metropolitan areas, but still in the states of Washington, Oregon, California, Hawaii, or Colorado, then we have a bunch of different doctors who can help you. Just call our toll-free number at 1-800-723-0188. We also are offering classes for patients on the law, how to administer cannabis safely, beginning and advanced classes in growing and in making medicinal-grade hashish. So if you're interested in those classes that our nonprofit organization is organizing, then call our numbers, and we'll be happy to help you. There's also, for our Portland audience here tomorrow, Oregon NORML will be having their once-a-month medical marijuana patient meeting. That's going to be at the New Tribe at 3525 Northeast MLK. The New Tribe headquarters. I understand it's pretty cramped in there, so you need to be there by about 11:30. I don't think they'll let anyone come through after noon. That's 11:30 tomorrow on Saturday, March the 10th. So again at 3525 Northeast MLK, and that's only open to medical marijuana patients with a medical marijuana card. And so I understand we have another caller now. Hello, caller. You're on the show.
Greetings, gentlemen. How are you doing tonight?
Hello.
Very well. How are you?
Good, good. I just wanted to follow up with a call about the gentleman that was talking about outside growing.
Yeah.
And how I agree with you, how as soon as you get to that 13-hour period or longer, that's the time to get out there. And sometimes you can cover your plant a little later in the year and start to induce flowering earlier, because everybody knows that when you get close to that time, you have the thieves that come out as well as a lot of other people that are wandering around the neighborhood.
That's true.
And, I wanted to give a heads up to people that are growing outside in the Portland metropolitan area, too, that last year was one of the record years that you've seen news broadcasts, talking about the bust in the Portland area here. And, in fact, a lot of these guys that have these news stations have their own helicopters. And I know there was a couple of instances, one with Channel 2 News that hovered over a house in the Park Rose area and looked in the back with their big, because their camera can zoom in from a mile in the sky. And,
well, we had an outdoor garden ourselves, and I'm looking at the camera with the cameraman behind it who called me when the news camera starts swooping around in the sky above our garden. But we were way under our limits.
I think they look for people that are over that limit, and then, what you see with these news guys now is they're generating their own news. They can't find any news, so they have to generate something, and that's a way for them to do that. Mm-hmm. And also, it doesn't take much for you to have your limit outside, but to go over that limit, on what you can have.
That's true. You have to be careful.
Outside,
and outdoor plants can yield a lot. I've seen an outdoor plant produce 12 pounds of bud.
Yeah, on an average,
that's unusually large. It's not unusual to have one go from 1 to 5 pounds. Is not unusual.
Yeah, and that's that adds up real fast, and it can throw you over before you know it accidentally.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. And I also
while it's on the stem, it doesn't count toward its dry weight. But once you've taken it off the whole stem of the plant, then you're up against the 24-ounce limit under Oregon law, which is really the most beneficial or relaxed limit in the country. In some states, you're limited to 2 ounces. In Oregon, it used to be 3 ounces. So 24 is definitely better for the patient.
We're making progress. I also wanted to comment on a law, and I know that there's some good intentions on the people that are trying to stop it, and I don't know if you heard about it, about the salvia d'Orivium. And
No, go ahead.
They're trying to come up with a law now to ban that and, put it on one of the list, like with marijuana. And I just encourage people to get a hold of their congressmen, their senators, and their lawmakers and look at that, because it's just another thing that they're trying to put on the books as being illegal. And to enforce it is going to just wreak havoc. And what this is just it's a plant, like marijuana, but it has more of a hallucinogenic. There's a lot of shaman use it in Mexico, and it's actually called miner's sage or Derivium sage. But what you have to do is you have to actually base it down to get it to where it's an extract to be powerful enough to be a hallucinogenic. So I could see that being against the law, but for them to just come in and make another plant against the law in the state of Oregon, there's already 5 states that have already passed this law, and I think that it's a path down the wrong road.
I agree with you wholeheartedly.
So I also wanted to just say one more last thing before I go about your guys' form. I had heard you talk about a lot of everything going on out there, including tomorrow's get-together, but I didn't hear about your form, and I want to remind everybody that you do have that free form out there.
That's true.
And
on our website, which we're on at hemp.org and crrh.org and thcfoundation.org, there is a patient-only forum. You have to have a password and a login to be able to get into it, but it's where patients can help other patients. There are some other ancillary sites like that on the internet. But
yeah, we have one that we run like that. It's called the OMMP Green Room. You can find it out there. Just Google search OMMP Green Room, and we actually have a form for every state that has medical marijuana in it.
All right.
And it doesn't have a lot of traffic, but we point a lot of customers and patients towards you over there, and hopefully we're adding more people to your list.
Well, thank you.
But I want to thank you guys again for all your help and what you're doing out there, and again, keep at it.
All right, thank you.
You
Thanks
bet.
for
Take
your
care.
call. Well, I think you can still get some of our Hemp News newspapers in libraries throughout Portland. We're in most of them out there, but we have a new one that'll be out in the next 2 weeks, and the publisher just wanted me to remind you of that. A new Hemp News. Just like we have our Hemp News segment at the top of every show. There we go. So, we've got a kind of shortened show tonight, but how was your week, Don?
My week was really good. My young son is down here from Seattle, moving down to help me out in my old age, and so it's a good week.
Can't beat that.
And he's going to be our newest cannabis activist.
All right.
That's right.
We're growing. The movement is growing. Let our people grow. That's what I say. Anyway, we're down to just less than 5 minutes to go on the clock. We got a little late start tonight. For those viewers out there, remember the normal meeting is tomorrow. If you're a patient, you can go by there and get some help, get your garden going. In fact, our THCF medical gardens, which you can see some photos of here in just a moment once our band gets back on, we have a few cuttings to give away there tomorrow, I think about 50. So I was told to add to the others that other people will be bringing. So help out Oregon Normal and other patients by giving those cuttings away. You can also go to those forums out there and do the same thing, help patients get their gardens going. Well, I'm just going to let the band play out the rest and let the viewers look at these juicy buds. We'll be back next week. Maybe then we'll have a full hour to discuss things. I want to thank you for watching. Anything you want to say in closing, Don?
I want to get this filled, this chocolate-covered pills. I want this refilled, Paul.
I've never seen the pills, but they got to be interesting.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching. Tune in next week and help us restore hemp. And now here's Frank. Thank you, folks. You can come down and join our studio audience if you want. We got Frank Dardano, Tim Pate, Don McFadden. Hit it, guys.